Joining us now, Eric Trump, a longtime member of the John Frederick Show. He's been on my show many, many times. He's the executive vice president of the Trump Organization. Eric, great to have you, man.
Hey, John, it's great to be back on. Congrats on the new station. And by the way, I like MAGA Radio. That sounds great.
I know. That's MAGA Radio Network. We're going to buy, hopefully, many of them in the Mid-Atlantic area in key areas that hopefully we can get people involved in. MAGA Radio Network. What a great idea. Thanks for saying that, Eric. I really appreciate it. Let's get to the midterms. You know, going to bed Tuesday night. I went to bed about 5 a.m., slept for an hour, got back up to do my show. It was looking pretty good. It looked like we were going to gain 4 seats in the U.S. Senate, lose maybe 27, 28 in the House. But now all these mail-in ballots come in. Montana goes back to tester. Arizona goes to cinema. I think we're going to hold Florida, so now that's +2. And every House seat that was tottering, mail-in ballots come in. That all goes to the Dems. Look like they're going to gain about 34 seats, something like that. How do you assess the midterms, Eric?
Listen, I think we had an amazing night, right? If you look at it, Obama lost 63 seats, and we were one of only, I think, 8 times since in the last 105 years or 108 years that a seat has been picked up in the Senate. I'm not just talking about. I'm literally talking about it's only happened 8 total Senate seats in the last 105 years have been picked up, and we picked up 4 of them now. I think we had a really good night. I think that's really good in terms of not having the nonsense that you saw with Kavanaugh. I think you'll put a lot of unbelievable judges on the bench, and do so without the disaster that was that last hearing. In terms of the House, I mean, traditionally people lose seats, right? I mean, your first year, and I think we actually outperformed there. They were talking about this, massive blue wave where hundreds of seats were going to be lost, and Obama lost 63 seats. Obama lost 63 seats. Where are we now, John? I mean, you'd probably know better than me. 27 or 28 or
right
29,
now we're 20.
Like that.
Right now, 29.
I mean, we were less than half of what Obama lost, and so. Listen, I think by all accounts we had an amazing night while picking up a bunch of people in the U.S. Senate, and so. But what's happening down in Florida, I think, is a travesty. I mean, it's caused people from all over the country to literally question our elections and the fairness and the trustworthiness of the election process. And it's amazing that 67 counties could get it right, and they could turn in all their voter information within 30 minutes of the close of the polls, other than two, and you know what they are, and it's it just makes you shake your head. I mean, it really makes you shake your head. We're better than that as a country.
Eric, what do you think is driving that?
Well, listen, I think there's, I don't even want to speculate, honestly, John, what's driving it. But it doesn't look right, and it doesn't feel right, and I don't think anybody thinks it feels right. I mean, all of a sudden, the polls close. They're up by 80 or 90,000 votes, and then miraculously another 90,000 ballots were found. And a couple of days ago, they had a Avis car, and they had ballot boxes in the back of the Avis car that were accidentally left at the Fort Lauderdale airport. And Brenda Sykes has been convicted, of tampering in the past and doing other kind of questionable things down in Florida. And you just put the whole situation together, and sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. Hey, it might be perfect, but certainly not perfect. I don't think anybody would think it's perfect, but it feels wrong, and it feels like something really bad is happening behind the scenes, and it's very, very sad because our country is based on a democratic process, democracy, and when you see this nonsense happening, not to mention the chaos, right? Every lawsuit and every this and every that. I mean, it's actually frightening, I think, as a civilian.
I agree with that, and the fact that his lead went from 90,000 to 12,000. But now it appears that it's stabilized, and I know there's some provisional ballots they're looking to count. There's not enough of them. I don't think that's going to overturn this. Many of them got rejected because the signatures didn't match, and Bill Nelson has filed suit over that. And one of the suits they filed, Eric, and I just want to get everybody to understand this. One of the suits they filed was for every ballot to be counted, regardless of if it was by an illegal alien, signatures didn't match, addresses didn't match, person didn't exist. Basically, their suit said if somebody filled out a ballot and put it in the box or tried to submit it, that should be counted. So basically what they're advocating is fraudulent votes. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
No, it's insane. It's insane, and this is the problem with the left. I mean, people can disagree on political topics. All of us are passionate about certain things, right? You can disagree, and you can come to a middle ground, and you can, right? But I mean, universally, people don't like this stuff. I mean, people don't like this stuff. If a ballot, if addresses don't match, and if signatures don't match, and if somebody wasn't competent enough to fill it out correctly and draw within the colored lines, and you can't distinguish who it votes for, I mean, come on, stop it. I mean, we're all big boys and girls. Everybody has to be above 18 in order to vote in this country. Like, what are we doing here? I mean, what are we doing here? And then who do you leave it to make those ultimate decisions? And and also, I mean, last but not least, I mean, illegal immigrants do not have the right to vote in America. I mean, we're America. The citizens of this country get to vote in this country, not illegal immigrants. I mean, think about the Pandora's box that would open up if you let that happen. Or anybody in the world that wants to vote in an American election could do it, citizen or not. I mean, we can't do this anymore, and people are universally against this nonsense. So I actually think in a big way it backfires against Democrats, because honestly, people don't see rationale to this. It seems totally unreasonable, and frankly, John, it is totally unreasonable.
Well, it's just the fact that in all of these closely contested elections, all of the ballots that were found tipped all of the results to all of the Democrats. I mean,
yeah.
I think
it's interesting how that happens in the history of our country. We've never had a Republican pick up votes, but it always goes the opposite way. And I mean, you mentioned the most compelling point. It went from 90,000 votes that he was up to 12,000 votes. I mean, it's kind of interesting how that happens as well. Until the entire eyes of the world are watching Florida and watching Broward County and watching Palm Beach County, and they're staring in, and you have hundreds of reporters out there and hundreds of lawyers and law enforcement and criminal investigations that are being launched, and all of a sudden everything stabilizes, and they find that everything's within one vote of where they originally were. I mean, again, if it so sometimes if there's smoke, there's fire, and there usually is. And whatever happened there, I hope they get to the bottom of it. But it's not our democracy. It's not our democracy. And by the way, if the rule is you turn in your ballots 30 minutes after polls close, you get your ballots in 30 minutes after polls close. And if somebody's not competent enough to do that, that person should be gone, and you should find somebody who's competent enough to do that. I mean, again, we all have big responsibilities in our respective lives. You have to go on your show every single day at a certain time, and you do every single time because that's your responsibility. These people's responsibilities, they get paid. They are elected officials who get paid to follow the rules and to get something done, within a certain framework. And if they can't do that, they've got to go. I mean, aside from the fraudulent stuff, if they can't do that, if they can't perform the task at hand, they've got to go.
Well, then you have to put somebody else in there that can execute it in a timely manner that's in accordance with the laws. This has been going on forever. It really is a travesty. We're with Eric Trump. He's the executive vice president of the Trump Organization, been on our show many times. Eric, I want to get to 2020 because now we're looking forward, not back. It is what it is. That's done. By the way, we're going to save the seat in Florida. Everybody has told me that is heavily likely to be confirmed for Rick Scott in the next several days after the hand counting's done. Eric, but I want to get to 2020. I serve as a member of the 2020 Trump Re-election Advisory Council, which I'm excited about. Look, I've been involved in this stuff for a long time. I've never seen a campaign get its feet on the ground and get things going so early. I think we're going to have a tremendous organization built going into 2020. I know you've been traveling a lot, talking to a lot of different people, some of the states that we were able to win in 2016. How do we repeat that? How do we win in 2020?
Yeah. Listen, John, my prediction is we do win in 2020, and I think we win by a lot. And I'm on the ground, and I love watching CNN. You have all these people who have never been to half these states, and they're reporting from an ivory tower in New York, and they don't feel the true passion on the ground. And here's the reality. I was in Ohio last week, and I was walking through a manufacturing plant. They made like corrugated metal for roofing, and the owner comes up to me. He goes, he brings literally all his employees around. He goes, I want to tell you, and he literally pointed to his employees. He goes, I just gave these guys an 8% raise because of the tax cuts. Mm-hmm. Because I used to be paying 39% in tax cuts, and now I'm paying 21% in tax cuts. And by the way, it enabled me to go and build an addition on the plant, which means I was able to hire additional people, and I was able to buy all new forklifts, which we desperately needed because our forklifts are breaking down every single day. And so, my employees are getting paid more. I'm able to hire more people. They're able to run a more efficient operation, all because of tax cuts. And John, I hear those stories every single day, no matter where I go. And, we have the best economy this nation has ever had. I mean, we have the fastest GDP growth. We have the lowest unemployment. I mean, the unemployment in this country, there's 7.2 million open jobs in this country right now, which is unthinkable. There's more open jobs in the United States right now than there are people to fill those jobs. That's how well our economy is doing. And
right.
The mainstream media, they never want to talk about this, and they never want to give credit where credit is due. Remember, Obama always said, manufacturing is never coming back. Trump doesn't exactly have a magic wand that could bring it back, and our economy is on fire. Our military is back. I mean, our jets, John, couldn't take off, 3 years ago because there weren't enough parts. So, half our jets, military fighter planes, were grounded. They were going to museums to borrow parts off of museum planes to get our fighter jets in the air. I mean, my father, what he's done with the military, he's rebuilt the military into the strongest fighting force in the world. You see the F-35s coming off the line. You see the ships being christened. I mean, all the other things that they're doing. It's the first increase that our amazing military personnel has seen in years and years and years. He's taking care of the vets. But then look at yesterday. Look at prison reform. I mean, the prison system is a system that hasn't been touched in 100 years.
Right.
That's totally broken. And look what they did yesterday with that. Look at what they're doing with prescription drugs. Look at what they're doing with healthcare costs, which is so incredibly important. And religious liberty, another thing that often doesn't get talked about anymore. But 3 years ago, if you said Merry Christmas, you'd be ostracized. And
right.
Today it's protecting freedom of religion. He's done that better than anybody. Protecting Second Amendment, and the good guys out there who believe in the right to bear arms, which include me in a very big way. I mean, there's so much that's being accomplished. But my father is deadly focused on the economy. He's focused 100% on judges, getting unbelievable judges on the courts, which obviously picking up so many seats in the Senate helps. He is 100% focused on the military, on our vets, and also, last but not least, not getting ripped off by every country in the world, because we've been taken to town by every nation around the world, John, and you know that better than anyone. Between 2001 and 2016, you and I have talked about this point 100 times, right? 2001 to 2016, after Bill Clinton signed NAFTA, we lost 70,000 factories in this country.
Right.
They all left. They went 1 foot south of the southern border. It helped Mexico's economy. It helped China's economy. All those companies are coming back into the U.S., and, the media doesn't even want to talk about it. It's a disgrace. I mean, it's an absolute disgrace. But this country is doing the best it's ever done. Our economy is on fire. And, listen, we should be, as Americans, and I'm a civilian in this process. I just maybe have a loud voice and can go out and advocate for a man I love tremendously, but we should be so proud as Americans because this country is doing the best it's ever done.
We're with Eric Trump, Executive Vice President of the Trump Organization, son of President Trump. Eric, as we look into 2020, and you talked about the tax cuts, one thing that really surprised a lot of us, including me, is that when all the exit polls were done, the tax cut didn't really resonate with a lot of voters. Part of it is because the legacy mainstream media demonized it for 18 months straight, and the Democrats did that as well. The other part of it, though, Eric, is businesses understand what's coming because they're figuring out. That's why that steel manufacturing plant was able to make their capital adjustments and hire people. But average people aren't going to see the tax cut until April, right? Then that's when people are going to do their taxes and say, hey, I paid $2,500 under what I paid in 2017. What I paid in 2018. Don't you think that's really going to make a difference? Which we haven't seen.
Sometimes I think issues like this are a little bit linear. I mean, you're filling out a ballot, tax cuts. Taxes are a pretty boring subject in general, right? It's not all that sexy of people kind of dread dread tax returns and that time of year and everything else, right? But it's not overly sexy conversation. But the story I told you about that manufacturing plant in Ohio a little while ago, I mean, all of a sudden I do very much believe that people equate Trump with the fact that they're making more money, they're getting more money right, and that's a direct result of tax cuts. I mean, people are employed where they weren't before. Unemployment under Obama was 10.5% at certain points during his administration, right? Right now they're 3.7%. I mean, so you're 6 percentage points higher, plus higher now than before. So people aren't working with 3 jobs. They have great jobs. They see their wages rising, and they do equate that to Trump. Now, do they directly equate that to a result of massively cutting taxes across the nation? Well, some obviously very much do, John, and others probably just don't think about it like that. They it's kind of the trickle-down effect of one thing which causes the other. But believe me, it's not lost on anybody in this country how well this economy is doing. I mean, everywhere I go, I hear from people. I was searching for a job. I was working multiple jobs. Now I have one job. I'm getting paid more than I did working the other jobs. I'm working less hours. And I've got health benefits, and I have all these other things, and I have great employment, and I'm happier, and I get to spend more time with my family. I mean, that's a meaningful thing, and believe me, it might not resonate when you just fill in the little bubble for quote-unquote tax cuts on some survey. And by the way, I question who takes these surveys,
right,
because the polling continues to be wrong. But Americans realize that they're living an exponentially better quality of life right now than ever before. Consumer confidence is the highest it's ever been. Wages are growing for the first time in this country in 16 years. We had 3.1% wage growth in this country. Believe me, people equate that to a Trump economy, and he gets tremendous credit, even from the people that hate him, John, about the nature of our economy, because we're doing awesome. I mean, we're really doing awesome.
It is better. I mean, it's even evident in my business. I've told this story many times. We've been able to do things and buy new equipment, buy a radio station, things that we've just not been able to do under the Obama economy without the tax cut. I've got a boatload of questions coming in on text from some of my listeners. I'm going to pick one. George in Newport News, Virginia says, I'm behind your father 100%, but his comments are sometimes insensitive. Can you talk to him about that?
George, I wish I could, bud. I mean, first of all, Newport News is amazing. I mean, what they do down there with the ships and the carriers and everything else is incredible. I mean, that proves that America is, by the way, the best manufacturers in the world. I mean, the ships that they put out of there are nothing short of. I was just watching a special on the new carriers that they're producing, and the job they do is like phenomenal. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. But George, one of the things that makes my father incredible is the fact that the guy's a fighter, right? And the thing that makes him the most effective is probably the thing that sometimes gets him in the most trouble. And I don't think you can take the fighter DNA out of a person. I think you're either a fighter or you're not. And this country desperately needed a fighter. We didn't have a fighter for a very, very, very long time. We had a lot of passive people who, put beautiful sentences together, and they sounded, great, but they got absolutely nothing accomplished. And we lost our economy. We lost our military. We lost our educational system. We were treating our vets horribly. We weren't doing anything well. And my father gets in there, and he fights. I mean, he fights for the things that he believes in. And hey, once in a while, does that kind of fighter, tough line person, does that maybe rub somebody the wrong way? Yeah. I mean, he's a Brooklyn kid from New York who's as tough as they come. At the same time, he's got the greatest heart in the world. I mean, quite frankly, I wouldn't be doing what I do. I wouldn't be advocating for him the way I do if he didn't. I mean, he's the greatest guy in the world with the biggest heart in the world. But this country needed a fighter. We were getting ripped off in everything we do. We were losing our industries. We were losing our military. We were losing absolutely everything. I mean, as I said, 70,000 factories between 2001 and 2016, all going overseas, all those jobs, all those lives. They were being lost, and you need a fighter. And sometimes when you're too much of a fighter, maybe it gets you in a little bit of trouble. Sometimes when you're not necessarily always PC, it gets you in a little bit of trouble, especially with a fickle media that wants to attack him for absolutely everything he does. But it also makes him the effective person that he is, and and he's brought our nation back. I mean, he's really brought our nation back. I've
only got time for one more question. Matthew in Charlottesville says, John, we love your new station. Tell Eric I go to his winery all the time. Great place. And my question is, Corey Lewandowski comes on your show every week and says there's people on the president's staff stabbing him in the back, not getting his agenda done. When is the president going to clean house?
Yeah. Well, I think my father has cleaned house in a lot of ways, and people they have to understand the political machine, right? I mean, we come from a kind of corporate world where you are very close to your employees and the people around you, and you guys you fight together, and you love them, they love you, their families, you'll do anything for them. Then all of a sudden you step into this swamp called Washington D.C. I mean, people look at the White House and they say, oh, that's a nice-sized building, but it's not overly huge. I mean, you've got 3,500 people that work in the White House, and all it takes is one or two or three of those people to kind of stab you in the back, and by the way, it absolutely happens. It absolutely happens. Now, it's a shame that it does, and it's a waste of time, and it's a distraction. But my father had some tremendous people around him. I mean, he has some tremendous people who know how to get the job done, and they've gotten the job done. Now, are there others that should probably go? Are there people who will leak things? Absolutely. And honestly, that's a swamp, and my father has worked very hard to drain the swamp. He's worked very hard, and I can tell you that swamp's a lot deeper than anything I ever realized. But there's also, just to be frank, there's still a lot of animosity for, a person, meaning in a DC environment, a person who came out of real estate, who was an immense success, who didn't know any of these people, who didn't rub shoulders with any of them, which, by the way, is a good thing. And all of a sudden this person comes in, defies all odds, wins in the biggest possible way, and is really effective. And there's a lot of people who are part of that kind of rhino, old school, Washington political class, quite frankly, on both sides, who have lost power, who have lost influence, who no longer get to play their special interest games. And believe me, that rubs some of the kind of political elite, quote unquote, the wrong way, and so you certainly get some of it out of that as well. But I'm telling you, I know, most of the people that are surrounding him, and there's some tremendous people and some tremendous talent. I really think he's got one of the great cabinets of all time, especially on the economic front. I mean, what they're doing is spectacular.
All right, Eric, we're out of time. I want to thank Eric Trump for being with us, Executive Vice President of the Trump Organization. Both Eric and I predicting that President Trump is going to win again in 2020, only bigger. Eric, I really appreciate you being with us today. Thank you so much, sir.
John, you be good. Thanks for the friendship, and I look forward to speaking soon.